a cloud. We're recording. Okay.
Okay. I do believe a lot of people don't realize they have a mental health problem, and they find their own coping strategies until they can't cope anymore, and it affects their everyday living.
Okay.
And that's when we start to realize that there's a major problem that we can't deal with. And we sign up and ask for help, medical help.
Yeah.
And I believe that was my case. You know, I did things like call the Samaritans. I coped by walking, by trying to think things through. But with the complex PTSD, I didn't realize how much I had.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how much it affected me. I used to disassociate, and I didn't realize why.
Okay.
I used to react to things, and I didn't realize. A part of me knew why. I knew it was triggers, but I just didn't know how to resolve it. And the other therapies I did have, they helped in some way, but they were like guiding tools to divert my chain of thought and not to spiral down into depression. But they didn't actually get rid of the causes.
Yeah.
For my depression.
Kind of treating the surface level, the distress that was showing up, Mel. Yeah.
Yes. Trying to calm the waters on the top.
Yeah.
But underneath, the current was very dangerous. It was. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. I did have a CBT.
Oh, okay.
And after that, I was referred to have CAT, which I found useful. But at the same time, I still had the disassociation. I still had the flashbacks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I believe that the last therapist realized that she must have put me onto the EMDR list.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Because she realized there was something much more than that.
Okay.
Something much more than that.
Yeah. So Mel, I think you said just now, sometimes people don't even realize that they've got mental health struggles. Do you think that was like that for you because you had lived your whole life kind of experiencing these difficulties and these struggles, that your trauma had gone on for so long that was just how it was for you?
Yes, I do believe that. I do believe that. With complex PTSD, it started from my childhood. So my train of thought was already like established from my childhood in a way.
Yeah.
The depression and the keeping the feelings to myself and not being able to express myself.
Yeah.
And yes, I used to look at some older people and realize and think, how do they manage to live so long? How do they manage to cope through life and not end it and live so long? Because I believe that everyone went through the same obstacles that I did.
Okay.
But that wasn't true.
No, because you didn't know that other people don't have those experiences.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the stuff you're coping, Mel, showed up. You mentioned dissociation. How else were you coping? What else was happening for you? How were you managing?
I wasn't. There was I think the chronic fatigue has a lot to do with that as well. I was shutting down. I was sleeping for long amounts of time. I was quite resourceful in the way that, like I said, I used to use the Samaritans a lot.
Yeah.
And whether it was on the phone or actually going and seeing them. Sleeping a lot, I used to. Sometimes I couldn't think, so I used to do Sudoku a lot, which is I would just let my brain rest with the numbers 1 to 10, 1 to 9. I didn't have to think about anything else.
Okay.
I tried to stay away out of places or situations that triggered me. So I did pull away from family and avoided certain scenes as much as I can in certain environments. But that also makes your world a lot smaller. So yes, those are the ways that I was coping.
Okay. Yeah. So keeping your brain occupied with specific things so you couldn't kind of focus on anything else, no space for anything else. Dissociation, sleeping a lot. Sounds like it was showing up in your body. You just chronically fatigued. Yeah. And so withdrawing and shutting down, really, Mel. It sounds like that's how you were getting through. Yeah. Okay. And when you had the CBT, Mel, what did they give you CBT for? Something specific? Was it like depression or anxiety, or what did you have the CBT for? Can you remember?
I believe the CBT was for depression.
Okay.
But, it didn't last long. From what I heard from other people who had CBT, I don't believe I had the same kind of treatment. I felt like I had to go there and talk, and they would just take notes. Where I've heard from other people, CBT is where they actually do show you which way to train your thoughts and how to react to certain things that are happening, and to notice the points to stop them going any further.
Okay.
So yeah, I wasn't successful with my CBT therapy. The CAT, I found it very helpful. It was like somebody recognizing what I'm going through and helping me to cope.
Okay.
And the therapist that I had, she was really good, and she would try and make sure that I was safe. But there was a lot of times when I was going home, I really was not safe. I was very angry. There was a lot of strong emotions coming out. And at that time, I was on my own. I didn't have a partner around. And yeah, I was lots of times going to the Samaritans and talking things over.
Okay. Yeah.
Starting to express myself, but still not quite sure what's going on, because it was too many, and I didn't realize until I came to you how many parts of me needed sorting.
Okay.
Yes.
And so it sounds like the cat therapist was the person, we never knew who, Mel, did we? The cat therapist was the person who maybe thought EMDR was the next way forward. Okay. Because when I came to meet you, I picked you up off the EMDR waiting list, didn't I? So I hadn't, I didn't make that choice. You didn't make that choice. Did you know you were on the waiting list for EMDR, Mel? Did they tell you that?
I did get a letter saying that, but I don't remember being told that I would be put on the list. I don't remember being told that, no. But I'm glad that she did put me on the list. So,
so am I. And did you look up EMDR, Mel, before I met you?
Actually, no, I didn't.
No,
I didn't. I think there was so much going on in my head.
Yeah.
That for day to day, just surviving, just trying to get through my day. That was enough for me.
Yeah. And you'd had, I'm right in thinking, Mel, aren't I? You had some input from the chronic fatigue service as well.
I did. I went to see them, and they said that since I seem to be aware what's going on and I'm pacing, that they had nothing more to offer me.
Oh, okay.
And I think it was just a new unit at that time. A friend of mine had been referred a few years after me, and they did more. They did like group sessions, but I think they were just starting when I went.
Okay. So when I met you, it was interesting, wasn't it? So I remember meeting you in the waiting room. We went in to the room together, and we, well, I sat down. You didn't sit down initially, which was fine. And we did the core. Well, you did the core. And I think this was my first awareness, Mel, wasn't it, of how dissociative you were, just from like how zoned out, as you call it, you were, but also when you filled in the measure, you crossed out the word I on all those statements, didn't you? And so you came to those sessions with me pretty aware that there was other stuff happening for you. You gave me a clear message from the get-go. And when I asked you, when you say we, Mel, do you mean you and other parts of you? You were very clear with me, yes. So we were already kind of getting on the same page from day one. You and I already knew what this work, not exactly what it was going to look like, but we already had a clear sense that, well, you were coming to me saying there's more than just me, and I was going, okay, we're in parts work, EMDR and parts work. This is where we're headed. So that was really helpful. Do you think those other therapies helped get you to that point, Mel? Do you think they helped you and just figure that out, or did you know that anyway?
I believe they did help me figure it out.
Okay.
And also having the condition for a long space of time.
Okay.
And that also, you think about things, and without realizing, your mind works things out as well.
Yeah.
The therapist, yes, I think the CAT was the one the most that helped.
Okay. So they stood you in good stead in terms of introducing you to those ideas and giving, it sounds like, I mean, we haven't said this on here, but you were already pretty skilled up in managing, Mel, weren't you? When I met you, you were involved in lots of strategies that you haven't mentioned for grounding yourself, for staying as present as you could, for managing your emotions and your risks and stuff. So from an EMDR perspective, phase 2, the stabilization phase for me was easier because you already were doing a lot of that. I didn't have to introduce all of that to you as new stuff.
You're right. I forgot to mention that. See, there was a phase where I'd go through. I always carried a certain kind of lavender scent that would ground me instantly, and I had it with me all the time. So
Yeah,
if I was out and about in town and I felt like I was becoming disassociated or floaty or not, it's really hard to explain it, but you really feel like that your feet are off the ground and that you don't belong here and that you're going to disappear.
yeah,
So the scent, I would just constantly sniff it, the lavender, and it would just ground me, put my feet on the ground firmer. So
yeah,
yes, I think when you
yeah.
stop using these techniques, you forget about them. But now,
Oh, so you're not using them you're not using them as much anymore. Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting.
the odd occasion I might use rescue remedy,
Yeah.
but that's it. I haven't used grounding for a long time.
Oh, wow. Okay, I
That's
didn't
why I
know
forgot
that.
about it.
Yeah.
So that's a good sign.
I think that is a really good sign. So I think something else that I thought remember was very noticeably different for you, Mel, was I couldn't get a history. It wasn't safe for me to get a history from you, was it? You know, ordinarily we learn in our trainings that we get a good history of the current difficulties, where they've come from. Some therapists will do timelines and things like that. And actually I couldn't do that with you, because I would lose you. You know, as soon as we started to access any of that material, you were gone, weren't you? You would zone out
It
and
was
come
so
out of your
complex.
window of tolerance. Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah, there was so
it
much.
was so complex,
Mm,
and I didn't know where to start, and each section was really painful. So yes,
yeah,
it was a whole boulder of things, like many boulders, not just like the one
yeah,
traumatic event that you can
yeah.
slowly nibble at the edges. These were just like a row of big things, and every time I came to say something, I just couldn't.
No,
It was just
no,
too much. And that's another thing. Remember, you said we said one of the symptoms was I couldn't talk.
no.
My voice
Yeah,
needs to go. Do you remember
it
that?
did. Now you've said it. I didn't remember till you said, but now you've said it. I did remember that. Yeah, I
My
do
throat
remember
would
that.
close up and I couldn't
Mm,
talk. Nothing
mm,
was so much emotion, so much. Yes, it just
yeah,
closed up.
yeah. Yeah, so I'm thinking back, Mel, about the stuff it would be helpful for people to know. So I think people would think, well, how did we decide what to process then, if you couldn't tell me about anything and we couldn't get a timeline? But I think we did it really flexibly, Mel, didn't we, if I remember? So um, from even down to stuff like whether we processed or not, you
That's
and I
right.
kind of knew that the minute I saw you in the waiting room, we would know, wouldn't we? If you were
Yes.
up and pacing about or zoned out, I knew we weren't doing it that day. We were going to have a stabilization day. But on the days when you did come in and were like, right, today I'm doing it, I'm going there, we clustered around ages. Do you remember? So although to this day, I don't know the exact details of what you processed, and that's absolutely fine. I don't need to, that's personal to you. I remember us having a younger you, like a
Yes.
teenage you, and then
Yeah.
there was the you that was coming, Mel in her 50s, and
Yeah.
then you were telling me there was like a 20s and probably a 30s and a 40s. So we tended to go around age groups, Mel, didn't we? And I think we went off what was the current symptom that was distressing you. So you would give me, I'd ask you, how's your week been? Which is phase 8 in EMDR, how have you been? How's your week been? And in that, there would come a point where I would start to lose you, as you'd start to get in touch with something that had triggered you.
Yes.
And we would go off that, wouldn't we? Do you
That's
remember?
true.
So I would say to you, okay, Mel, I can clearly remember, we spoke about this last week, didn't we? The spoon, I didn't have a spoon. So you'd read or you'd seen something on the news about girls
It was
going
in the news.
abroad in the
Yes.
summer holidays and being advised to put a metal spoon in their clothes, so that if they were being sent abroad to get married, the spoon would set off the alarms in the airport and then they could ask for help. And I
Yes.
remember you saying, I didn't have a spoon, and I could see you going. And I was like, right, Mel, what's the score on that? A 0 to 10. So we weren't getting an image. We weren't going backwards. We were going in on the current stuff, weren't we?
Yes.
What stuff that was triggering your dissociation. So I would say to you, okay, notice that, what on the 0 to 10 scale, how distressing is that? And you'd give me a number, but we wouldn't get, what's the negative belief about you? What would you rather? What is it making you feel? Because I'd have lost you if I'd have asked all of that. So we would find the moment when you started to go, and then I would give you an option, often, Mel, wouldn't I?
Yes.
Mel, are we going to do this with the standard? Often we couldn't do it with the standard, but sometimes you felt able to work on something with the standard protocol. But in those moments, we would tend to use the SIPOS technique. Do you remember the back of the head scale?
Yes.
When you're right back here, Mel, at 0, this is I'm very back in it, and you know, out here is 10 out of 10. I'm present with you, Alex, in the room, and I feel okay. Although actually, now I've said that, I remember you telling me that you would never be above an 8. 8 was always our 10, always your 10, which was fine. Do you not remember that?
I remember what you said about, you know, being in the room and being away, being actually in it, or being, you know, in the room with you and experiencing it from a distance. But you're right, I never felt at that point that it would be a 10.
No, and that was okay. You know, you'd spent pretty much your whole life coping through dissociating, hadn't you? So it was no big shock that you weren't going to be a 10 out of 10. So we would notice the thing that you'd brought up about how your week had been. We'd give it a SUDS rating, and then we would use, where are you on the scale, Mel? And we would do a lot of grounding you in the present, bringing you back up in the here and now, wouldn't we?
Yes.
You were looking out the window, you were smelling the smell on your wrist. We had the plant. Do you remember that plant? And how much
we've had the plant a lot. The whole plant pot on my lap,
touching it, talking to it, nurturing it. We had the plant. Those rooms were really bland in hindsight, weren't they? There wasn't a lot to look at. But I think you showed it to me at the beginning. You've had your bean bag. You've still got your bean bag that I gave to you.
That was another grounding thing. The beads. It's just something so calming about it. And like you said, it brings you straight to the here and now.
Yeah. So you and I would throw that, wouldn't we? We were face to face. So you and I would throw it to each other, but you would feel it. You would squash it. I'm trying to think of the other things you were doing. We would do notice things around the room. There wasn't a lot to notice, but we would do, what can you hear? What can you see? What can you smell? Noticing the here and now. And then I would ask you, where are you on the scale now? And then we would install that, Mel, wouldn't we? With slow, well, it was eye movements because we were face to face. So we would do slow, or sometimes you'd tap. I've just remembered that. Sometimes you would tap, wouldn't you? And then we would just dip, like if you just noticed the spoon, Mel, for like 2 seconds, and then come back. And actually what would happen often, Mel, is you wouldn't stay on the thing that was current. It would take you to the thing that was fueling that triggering in the here and now, wouldn't it? So it would never take long before the feedback you were giving me, even though you'd only noticed the spoon, for example, for 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 7 seconds, whatever, the feedback then wouldn't take long before it had taken you backwards into the stuff that it was tapping into. And then we would discover which age group we were in, wouldn't we?
That's right. I do remember that a lot of times my daughter here, she was here when we were starting the EMDR, and she would look at me, because it's hard to explain to people, but when you're distressed, you would react differently. I used to stand and I used to either hug myself, or my arm would be moving involuntarily, or I would be shaking or moving or swaying. And my daughter recognized signs, and she would come and hug me and say, okay, Mom, what's bothering you now? Not bothering you, what's on your mind now? And I would say to her, I don't know yet, but it will tell me. Okay. And it used to be like that on the way to your appointments. I wouldn't know. I could feel this discomfort, the anger, the emotions, but I couldn't pinpoint what it was exactly until I'd actually, sometimes, like you said, there was a small thing that would take me to it, or I would walk into the waiting room and I'd realize
this is it.
That part of me, that small part of me would say, we're talking about this today. I've got a lot to say.
Yeah, that's just made me remember.
Sorry, you froze a little bit.
Oh, did I? No, you go, Mel. Sometimes you.
Yes, it's still freezing up a little bit, but hopefully it'll clear up now.
You were saying sometimes you, and then you froze.
Yeah, sometimes I didn't know what I was going to speak about. I didn't know what I was going to speak about until I actually walked into the waiting room. And then that character would show, or that part of me that wanted to express itself would show.
Yeah.
Like the
And
17-year-old.
yes, that's the part I was just having a little chuckle about. That was brilliant. I love her. That was so different.
It's like she actually came forward and just slumped herself on the chair. Didn't want to fill out was it the core form?
Wouldn't fill out the core.
She didn't want to fill out the form. She filled it out
Screwed
reluctantly and screwed it up, put it in the bag. Yes.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember you coming in and me thinking, oh, okay, this feels different. I've not, and I asked you, didn't I? Because I would ask you at the beginning of every session, have you done your core, Mel? And you'd go, no, I haven't. No, I haven't. And I was like, oh, okay. And so we, I just went with that, really, didn't I? Then, so it must have been that 17-year-old did want me to do something, because somehow or other we were processing, weren't we? And then actually within that, she got heard and seen, and then you came back. I had Mel back, and at the end, I remember you smoothing out. You pulled
the paper
out. I can't remember where you pulled it out from, but you pulled out this core and smoothed it out and gave me this crumpled up sheet, which really made me chuckle. But I think that's really important for people to know, isn't it? Is just like, it was so client-centered, Mel. Your EMDR, all that we knew, all you and I knew was, we want you to be less dissociative. That was your main aim by the end of the therapy, wasn't it? I want to be less dissociative. So I didn't have, because you'd been through so much, Mel, I didn't have a strong thought through treatment plan ahead of me, other than parts work, working with defenses, going with the flow, meeting you where you're at, making sure it was safe, really, and not trying to force you or encourage you to do stuff that you weren't ready, or your system, the girls, weren't ready to do. And actually what happened over the course of that time, when we took that really respectful approach, was other parts came forward, didn't they? So do you remember the much younger part showed up, didn't she? You said you didn't know she was there.
Exactly.
We did a little bit with her, didn't we?
Yes. Yeah. And she was content after that. Once we finished work with her, I felt like she was around. No,
she just needed to be heard.
That's right. She was around and she was looking at her older selves, but because her mental capacity was only 8, she was satisfied with the work that we'd done. And she was content just to be around and just, that is fascinating. It sounds surreal, but that is exactly what PTSD is about. Trauma at different ages.
And we used to, talking of her, we used to, when we were processing other things that came later on, we used to have like a bit of invisible group therapy with them, didn't we? And deciding who needed to be present for what, who didn't need to be present. And I clearly remember us both saying, do you know, I don't know that an 8-year-old needs to be present for this. Like, where can she go? And you used to like take her somewhere, didn't you, in your mind, and put her, and I can remember you saying, she's playing, she's happy, she's occupied. And she would go and do that. And we didn't fill her in after on what had gone on, because an 8-year-old doesn't need to know that stuff. But often the others were there, weren't they? To varying degrees.
They were. And the one, as you know, as you're aware, who was hurt the most, the one who took longest to trust us.
She did. She did. She was in a really difficult place, wasn't she, when we met her? She was down. I feel sad even talking about it. She was down the hole, wasn't she?
Yes.
And she didn't want to come out. She didn't want to be part of any of it for a while. But can you remember what we did with that, Mel? Can you remember how we supported her to come?
Yes, I do. We would encourage her slowly to come, through the therapy, to just to come up a bit. And I felt that I think she was about 26, 27-year-old. This young mother who, I think she was really hurt because the adults, the grown-ups, or the people that she could turn to, she couldn't.
No,
she couldn't. And Yeah, we worked with her slowly and slowly until she gained our trust that these adults are not going to let her down. And we let her come up slowly at her own pace.
We did,
And
yeah.
we didn't push her to come out even further. And she was always near the edge, ready to pop down.
Yeah.
And I remember that one session we had, and I said, she's sitting on the edge. She's actually raised herself out of this hole, and she's sitting with her legs dangling, ready to go back in if she needed to, but she felt more confident.
Yeah.
But it was a few sessions before she actually
It was. She really wasn't sure about us, was she? She needed to know a lot about us and what we were or weren't going to do, didn't she?
Yes.
To be able to trust. So we asked, well, we did a lot of noticing her, didn't we, with compassion.
Right.
And even though she wasn't looking at us with compassion back, that didn't matter. We maintained that compassion, didn't we? And if I remember rightly, Mel, it was you that she connected with. She needed to ask via you to me, what are we going to do? And needed lots of reassurance about not doing anything she didn't want to do, that she could dip out, stop whenever she wanted, that she didn't have to be present for all of it. But I remember you saying, it feels like you've got hold of me and I can then reach back for her. So we were like a little chain, weren't we, going backwards to help her kind of trust us and come out of the hole and join in. Yes,
you're right. I remember we described it like that afterwards. It's like slowly pulling her out, you know, with the skills that you have, with the knowledge of what I have, what she's been through, and slowly getting her out and reassuring that it's okay, that she's going to be safe. Yes. And in the meantime, also working through the traumas. In between that, we were working through the traumas, the ones that made her feel unsafe.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. So we were dipping in and out, Mel, weren't we? So for people who don't understand parts work or how do you do EMDR with parts work, we were moving between phases, weren't we? So the noticing her with compassion and the finding out what does she need and want. For people watching this, that would be phase 2. We're looking at stabilization and prep. And then you and I would move into trauma processing, whether we were doing that with SIPOS and the back of the head scale and just noticing and coming back, or whether sometimes within a session you would move from SIPOS into standard protocol fairly quickly, wouldn't you? So I would always give you the choice, Mel, are we going to standard or SIPOS that? And you'd tell me which one you wanted, but we were very flexible with that. If we started with SIPOS and you were becoming really dissociative, if we started with standard and you were becoming really dissociative, we'd switch back to SIPOS.
That's right.
And other times, if you said, I think I need SIPOS, we'd go with that. But we, sometimes within minutes, we found we were in standard territory because you were able to notice for a good 20 plus seconds and still be fairly present when you came back to me. So I guess the key to all of this, Mel, was flexibility, wasn't it?
It was. And I was very lucky because you noticed the changes in me. You noticed how much I could take as well. Sometimes before even I had made the decision, which I think is crucial, because if there was now I'm remembering certain images and certain people, the way they used to, my memories, the way I used to react. As you said, I wasn't ready to process it.
No.
And we do it for a couple of seconds. And if I felt like I could go on further, I would. And then sometimes I would say to you, I can't, and we would change the system.
Yeah. Sometimes we didn't process at all, did we? We would go back to stabilizing you in your life.
Yes,
if you were feeling riskier, we would focus on that and do the safety work around that. I think it's really helpful. You had I think you had 2 in the time we were together over 18 months. Good care coordinators, didn't you? The first one in particular, you'd had quite a longer relationship than people normally have these days. So that was really helpful because she and I and you were all letting each other know what was happening. So the work felt held in the session, but I also felt pretty confident that you and she had that outside of that, and if you ever needed to contact me, you did. So she and I were both checking in with each other, sending emails, writing on the electronic system, and keeping each other firmly in the loop really about what was happening. And I think that really supported the work. Plus you had your daughter living there.
I do believe that did support the work, you're right. And also I liked, not like is not the right word, I do appreciate that there were times when the session came to an end, you always made sure that I was in a safe place before I left the room.
Yeah, yeah.
Able to cope with the emotion that I'd experienced. Because as they said with EMDR, the emotions become more real, they become more raw, everything comes out. It might get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
But you made sure that I never went home.
No, we had a little agreement, didn't we? Yeah. So I would always keep an eye on the time, but I think the honesty, the transparency between both of us was huge. You know, you were always, and I always invited you to be very honest with me about the effect it was having on you, how much you could or couldn't tolerate. I equally would be saying, look, Mel, I don't think we need to do this today. You know, you've been feeling riskier, we need to stabilise. But even within the time slot that we had together every other week, we may not process very much at all that day. We might do 5 minutes, we may do 10 minutes. Sometimes you came in and you were like, right, today I'm on it, and we would do nearly an hour. But what we always did was leave time, appropriate amount of time at the end to get present, to, you know, do a little bit of reflecting on what had gone on. And then we were lucky in that, you know, there was a waiting room, wasn't there, that you felt safe enough in. And if you ever needed or wanted to stay there, you could. So we had a little sort of strategy, didn't we, I think, for managing within the session, but outside of sessions as well. Yes. To help you feel
very
safe.
Important. It's very important. That's very important, because like it brings up emotions, it opens up emotions, and the last thing you want to do is leave.
Yeah.
That support is it's all part of it.
Yeah.
I do have to say, it's been how long now since I the last session?
So we finished in April 2019. It would have been. Is that right?
It's coming up 2 years. Yes, it was April.
Yeah.
Well, for some reason, I have been aware that it's not just the sessions that you've given me. It's processing. I feel like that my here somewhere, it's like it's still working. It's still working, and it's like when I see triggers, the way I react is not like the way I used to react before. Everything is more toned down, so much more normalized. I didn't realize how. Okay, I know you're not going to like the word abnormal. The condition I had was normal to the situation I'd been to.
Yeah, it was an appropriate response.
Yes, I didn't realize exactly how normal people react to things. So it's really makes life enjoyable, you know, to go out, and when you see things, you don't react or you don't dissociate. You just it just makes life so much more so much more danger free, and so much more carefree. That's the word.
Carefree. That's lovely. Yeah.
And it's still, I can feel I'm still improving.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't realize that I have I don't realize that I have more to improve until I get to that stage, and I think, wow, I thought I was better then. No, I'm feeling much better now.
Yeah.
So the process.
This has been fascinating for me, Mel, because normally, obviously, when I finish therapy with somebody, I don't see, they go on their merry way, and I don't see them again unless they come back for something else. But this has been so fascinating for me, because you and I saw quite a lot of improvement, didn't we, over, and although we've, you know, I've used the phrase 18 months on here, actually, we only saw each other every other week. And then there were certain points where you were away or I was away, and we would go longer, wouldn't we? And I think, if I remember rightly, although you and I saw each other over the period of 18 months, I think you only had 30 something sessions. It wasn't
I think it was like 32.
Yeah, it really wasn't a lot to get the work covered that we got covered. And you were a lot less dissociative at the end of that. You know, you had a lot better awareness of the stuff that had gone on, but it was like, I think you talked, I can't remember the phrase you used, Mel, but you said something about something about you girls being a team, or we've become I, or there was a phrase like that you used.
I think we all became one. We did all
That was
become
it.
one.
We all became one. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And you were growing your hair. So this was the thing that shocked me when I saw you. Probably, was it a year later? Must have been, because when we finished therapy, you were growing your hair long. You had black hair and you were growing it long, weren't you? Because you wanted to look in the mirror at that 20-something-year-old and really see her. Yeah, and then I met you. I mean, your hair's grown again now, but I met you in February or January last year, didn't I? In 2020. And it was really short and cropped. And you were like, yeah, no, I'm done with that. I don't need, I've done that bit. I'm moving on.
Yes.
And now I see you again and it's growing again. But it's really fascinating because I know, it's EMDR therapists, and in the trainings we say to our clients, and we hear on the training, it will carry on. When you've kick-started that healing thing, it'll keep doing its thing. But what I had never anticipated, I don't think, was how much it keeps doing that thing after the sessions are done.
It's liberating, really liberating. Like, you enjoy life, you enjoy the simple things. You feel worthy, and you feel grounded without having to ground yourself.
Okay, yeah, it's not something you have to do, it just is it?
It just is.
Okay.
And whereas before you feel a disassociation, you don't feel like you belong, you feel like you're this entity all on your own. You don't feel like you're connected. But with the after the EMDR and the process, you feel more that you belong to the community. It's just natural. It's just a lovely, lovely feeling. And also all the trauma's been processed, so you look at it from a different point of view as well.
Okay.
Yes, some people you probably will never forgive, but there's also, you realize, circumstance. A lot of people were stuck in circumstance.
Okay.
And for what I went through, we were in like a pressure cooker. That's the only way to describe it.
Yeah.
And bouncing off each other, and some of the things that I went through. So I look at it now and think, well, there's a lot of people there that they've been through something as well.
Okay.
And it wasn't exactly there, it was circumstance, as you said.
Okay.
And I do believe, I love my relationship with my parents. I'm really grateful for the EMDR because I can talk to them and enjoy them while they're still here.
Okay. Yeah.
Whereas before I couldn't talk to them, it was traumatic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
So
they wouldn't talk to you either, really, Mel, would they? If I remember, there was kind of this, everyone was acting like nothing had really happened when everybody was pretty traumatized by everything that had happened. But it sounds like that has shifted. I mean, it was shifting when you and I were having the sessions together. It was shifting, but I think it's changed again. When you and I spoke the other day, it sounded like that's something else that's continued to change your relationship with your mum and your dad.
One of the things I do appreciate, like with the EMDR, is how you taught me to stand my ground, my worth, and not to be so submissive. So the phone calls with my parents, it was like when certain topics were mentioned, I would say, I don't want to hear it. Yeah. And they also realized that if they want their daughter to talk to them, that they had to change the way they spoke as well. Okay. But as you said, with all the trauma, no one said anything. It was like everything was hidden under the carpet. Yeah. But with EMDR, it's really has not just changed my life, it changed all like my connections with my family, my children. So it has a knock-on effect. Good. Yes. So anybody thinking of doing it, I would definitely recommend it. Yeah. Yes, definitely.
What would you say to therapists who are worried about working with complex trauma? You may not know the answer to this, Mel. I'm just curious, if we've got EMDR therapists who are thinking, well, I know EMDR, but I'm not, what do I do with complex trauma? What would your advice, having had EMDR for complex trauma, what would you recommend they do with their clients?
I would recommend that let the client lead them. Okay. Yes, be aware of what the client needs and help them along. But when it comes to subject matter or where along the timeline, because we can't go through the brain and say, okay, I want it from this date and this date. No, what happens to someone who's traumatized, which you're aware of, whatever is really hurting or needs sorting out there and then, it will present itself.
Okay. Yeah.
And
So
that,
be
I
led
believe
by.
that really helped. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've named it really, but you and I trusted that process. We, so in the EMDR, we talk about trusting the adaptive information processing system, that it'll come right, even if things don't make sense or seem fragmented. If you gently keep going, somehow it kind of all comes together and begins to make more sense over time. And I think that's exactly how we did it. And it's just reminded me of the session where you were really down on yourself because you were like, I haven't done EMDR and I'm really sorry, and I should have done EMDR today. And I was like, Mel, do you know what you've done? And you said no. And I was like, you've given me a timeline for the first time ever, and you haven't associated, and you've literally chronologically listed out for me the other things we need to process. And that was amazing. But it didn't matter that we didn't have it at the beginning, because we trusted the process, and it then did give you those bits of information that we could then do the timeline with. And we were already doing the age thing, but we were then more aware of what was in the age brackets, and we would pick like a couple of things, Mel, wouldn't we? I think from memory, that we might need to go near, but we might not go near it, and we're going to move away and go near it and move away. We were kind of away and towards and away a lot, weren't we, with different targets depending on how much you could tolerate. But it did unfold. I felt like we trusted it to unfold and do, and as long as we kept it safe, it did that.
It did naturally unfold, as you said, and like we have no control over what emotions we're feeling the most. So by the time, like I mentioned, I got to you, then it will be clear. Okay, this is what we're talking about today. Gosh, that's fascinating. Absolutely. When you think back at it, it's fascinating how the process works.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing, isn't it?
It is. That was really. And also, I can't bring up those emotions because they're not there anymore. Those intense emotions that I had. I can't express them because they're not there. And that's a wonderful thing. Everything has been processed and put away.
You're not just managing them, like you're not just coping with them and using strategies to manage them. They don't exist like they did anymore.
They don't exist. A majority of them, I could say about 95% of them don't exist. There is a couple that still do, and I don't realize they do until I see something. And then I'll feel a little of the anger or whatever it is that's at that moment, but then it doesn't last and it doesn't change my day.
So
it's not like before, whereas the traumas, it would just affect your whole day, the way you live, what you're doing. You just couldn't function properly. But now if I see something, it's like, okay, I'll say whatever it is in my mind that I want to say about this, and then I just put it away. It doesn't go on or fester or and you don't realize how well you are as well until you are approached by certain scenarios or scenes or triggers, and that is a good thing. Because that's when you realize, wow, that doesn't affect me. Because I used to see certain things and I used to think, okay, I'm being punished or I'm being invaded, my personal space is being invaded. And then now when I see these same things, I'm thinking, oh, look, there's diversity here. There's things going on here. I just don't have the same reaction. So much more, so much more normal living.
That's brilliant, Mel. There's probably so much more I could ask you and we can talk about, but maybe we can do other videos. I think it's just really, really lovely that you feel able to share your experience of EMDR for complex trauma, because I think it's something people worry about a lot. And, it doesn't always go as well as yours did, Mel, but equally it doesn't have to be re-traumatizing and awful.
That's right. No, that's right. I think EMDR, it does help. And as I said, it does help. I believe anybody who has EMDR, even if they cannot resolve everything, or it will change their lives. It will make it much easier, much more livable. You're not consumed by the emotions and the you don't call them side effects, but like you said, the disassociation, the trauma,
the coping strategies. Yeah.
So it's all good. It is all good. I know them when we are talking, we're not actually talking about subjects of what it was that I've been through.
No.
And so it's vague as well, again, for anybody else who really wants to know how EMDR works. But at the same time, everybody's traumas are different in life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And I think you've said a really good point there, Mel, because some people come thinking, oh, I'm going to have to say everything about everything. And, you know, with the best will in the world, not many of us would want to do that about some of the most awful things that have happened to us. And so something that was not just necessary, not just helpful, but completely necessary for you, for us to get anywhere, was I couldn't know. I didn't mind knowing, but you couldn't tell me. And if you did start to tell me, you shut down, I lost you. So we were still able to do, I think one of the things I really love about EMDR is we can still do that work without you needing to share everything that is either going to throw you out your window of tolerance or make you incredibly ashamed or bring up a whole load of the defenses and parts that don't want you to tell me that for various reasons. And it was entirely possible for us to do that work without me knowing a lot. I think I hardly knew anything, Mel, did I? You know, I knew the gist of.
Yes, that's right.
And I knew an age.
Yes.
But I didn't know. So I think for people who are really worrying that they're going to have to share everything and come and relive verbatim the traumas, you know, word for word, that doesn't, you're living proof, Mel, that doesn't need to happen at all. And the 10 worst memories don't need to be listed at the beginning. And, you know, there are so many creative ways of getting into EMDR that can avoid all of those fears, I think, and shaming things that they're not necessary.
Also, the traumas, they don't have to be physical.
No,
it is also that the mental traumas, the restrictions, the confinements, I don't know how to say it, the culture, the contradiction between cultures, the brainwashing, and it's just trauma comes in so many forms.
It does, yeah.
And complex PTSD is usually a mixture of those. And it's, as you said, it's difficult to talk about, but as you also said, we managed it without having to talk about everything. And we got through it. That's so cool.
We did. Well, I'm really, really pleased for you, Mel. I was, you know, chuffed to bits that it's had the effect it's had on you and that we got to work together.
I was chuffed to bits.
You're still willing to talk to me.
And I was very lucky to have you as my therapist, because you read me like a book, as in like knowing what I needed. You know, before I'd realised it, I'd have a plant pot in my lap. You know, it's like I shouldn't do.
I think we had a name for it, didn't we? I can't remember the name now.
I forgot, but I'm glad it was the same plant every day. Every time we met up with the same plant.
I'm sure it had grown when we left. I'm sure it had grown. Well, Mel, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with me today. And, you know, for the people that are going to watch this, they'll be incredibly grateful. They really will. And you and I are going to do some other shorter ones where we talk a little bit about some of those strategies in more detail at some point, aren't we? So they'll see more of you.
Okay. No, I think that's good. No, thank you, Alex. And thank you for this opportunity.
Mel. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
You take care. Bye.
Bye.